Okay, people, today's topic is, I guess congratulations are in the order for Rory and Mal. They signed a $10 million deal, and I believe the app is called Sketcher. Anywho, they signed a $10 million deal with these folks, and I'm getting this from the article from the webpage of The Root. Go check it out. Congratulations are in order. We should give these guys their flowers. They're just dues. After leaving the Joe Budden show, Joe Budden fired them on their day off. They left in a scramble mode, wondering what their next move is going to be. Then you hear these possible rumors of Rory and Mal possibly suing Joe Budden. You've heard Joe Budden say it on Instagram Live. If these guys start a new show, he's going to sue them because they're still under contract. Yada, 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 from a bunch of areas. And I guess the people have spoken because their podcast that is on YouTube, their numbers are bigger than Joe Budden's numbers on YouTube. And I guess they also signed a deal with Kevin Durant, 57 and Vulture. And now these guys are signing an exclusive deal. From what I'm reading in this article, it sounds like an exclusive deal. And we should give them their flowers. Now, let's put into context. Let's get into reality, folks. Let's get into the meat and potatoes of this pot roast. Even though we should all applaud them for, getting their money, for them getting the bag. $10 million is a lot of money to you and I. $10 million is a lot of money for a lot of people out there. But in the podcasting world, $10 million is not a lot of money. It just isn't. If you want to put it into perspective, when they were on the Joe Budden show, remember, Joe Budden turned an exclusive deal down with Spotify to renegotiate with Spotify. He turned that deal down. He turned a lot of money down just to be exclusively to Spotify because Joe Budden figured it out. If it ain't a large exclusive deal, if the bag is not that large, going independent and having your podcast in other outlets is a good thing. But $10 million, we should congratulate these guys on because a lot of people thought they wouldn't be able to do it. DJ Academics have spoken about this, and I have done my research on this. But when you look at Rory and Mal's new podcast show, and I told you guys in the beginning when this thing started, I think we shouldn't look at that small sample size and say to ourselves, okay, they beat Joe Budden. And a lot of people were using numbers from YouTube analytics. But podcasting and doing shows on YouTube, podcast shows on YouTube is two different things. Just two different things. The analytics that you use in podcasting is different from the analytics you use from YouTube. Now, a lot of people, and including myself, when Joe Budden was negotiating deals, everyone was questioning it, turning down that money with Spotify, even though I would have took the money. But what I would have done and what Joe Budden ultimately did is two different things itself. When he turned that money down, when he made the Joe Budden podcast exclusively to Patreon, and then he will upload it later at a later date on YouTube. A lot of people thought that was kind of funny, but when you think about it in the grand scheme of things, he was making his podcast exclusively for the people that are sign to his Patreon, and they should get first dibs first. I think that's a smart move, particularly when people are paying for different perks than regular people. Now, from the other people. Now, let's talk about the podcast numbers themselves, the analytics of podcasting itself. And DJ Academics even said this best. Now, DJ Academics compared his new podcast off the record to what Rory and Mal is doing. He's comparing his numbers to Rory and Mal's number. We need to keep this in mind, and let's be fair across the board. DJ Academics podcast is a small sample size. He hasn't done this, for a long amount of time. But basically, he's saying, look, when he got the podcast up and running, he's doing twice, sometimes 3 times the amount of people listening to it than Rory and Mal. He's also making more than Rory and Mal. Rory and Mal's podcast is not listed in the top 10. It's not even listed in the top 5 when you compare it to all other podcasts. Keep in mind what I just got through saying. All other podcasts. Not the hip-hop podcasting, not the shock jock podcasting, not the entertainment podcasting, not the fashion podcasting, not the YouTube analytics. We're talking about all podcasts combined. And they're not going to crack that number. And they're definitely not going to crack that number if they make the podcast exclusively to Sketcher or whatever you call it. I'm familiar with the app. I don't utilize that app. I feel like a lot of people don't utilize that app or that website. I feel like, for the most part, when people listen to podcasts, the 2 biggest places you go to when you listen to a podcast, and there's going to be people in the comment section, oh, no, I go here, I go. Well, you're exclusively from this conversation, but a lot of people get their podcasts enjoyment from the Apple, the iTunes Podcast Center, and Spotify. And everybody else follows. Everybody else is a distant third and fourth. And it would have been one thing if Rory and Mal got an exclusive deal with the iTunes Podcast. It would have been different if they would have gotten an exclusive deal with Spotify, since they should have been familiar with Spotify, since they were the ones when Joe Budden turned that Spotify deal down and said that we should have taken the Spotify deal, since this is the main reason why their relationship even deteriorated even more, because of Joe Budden's decision to not renegotiate with Spotify. You would think, since they've been on record saying they should have kept the Spotify deal, well, how come there was no conversations with them and Spotify as far as making a deal with them or making an exclusive deal with them? That should just prove and set for the record that Spotify is more interested in Joe Budden and less with the rest of the show. Also, with this exclusive deal, how much of their IP that they own? A lot of people are not talking about that. A lot of people are not aware of that. How much of Rory and Mal IP do they own, and how much they own it for signing that $10 million deal? What about their episodes? Does this mean that the episodes are going to be exclusively uploaded on their site first, and then it trickles down to YouTube and iTunes and Spotify? Let's just be fair and be honest. Just even if we compare this deal around the people that we're familiar with, this deal is not better than what Charlemagne the God is getting for his own podcasting network. Okay, this deal is not better than what DJ Academics is getting. Okay, this deal Even though a lot of people are going to say, no, that's where you're wrong, my friend. You're wrong, my friend. This deal is not even better than Joe Budden's deal, and Joe Budden's deal is not that good. This deal is not even better than Andrew Soch. So when you compare this deal to other people in the landscape, particularly people that we're familiar with, this deal is not even better than the $1 million worth of game deal, which, by the way, we still don't know how much Gilly and Wallow makes from that deal, but they own their own IP. And their podcast is on all of the platforms. It's just not exclusively on one platform, or it's exclusively on one outlet, and then the next day the rest is exclusively everywhere else. But this deal is not even better than that deal. And a lot of people are going to say, well, what you basing it on? I'm basing it on how the contract is constructed with those other people I just mentioned, and how it's possibly constructed with Rory and Mal. I don't know all the details, the parameters of their contract, but like I said earlier, we don't know. $10 million, and the time you pay taxes, the time you take out the taxes, you take out processing fees, you take out the studio, you still owe money on the studio. When you take out for equipment, when you the other employees that's under your show, under your umbrella, all your expenses, things of that nature. How much of that $10 million at the end of the day, Rory and Mal get to split between themselves? I think this is a great deal for you and I. This is a great deal for most people in the world. But when you talk about Rory and Mal, I feel like this is a very cheap deal. And they left more money on the table with Joe Budden. They left more opportunities at the table with Joe Budden to do their own thing, and they're making $10 million. Now, once again, like I'm gonna say this again, give them their flowers, give them a clap. I think that's look, from where they started to where they are now, that's good. It's all good in the hood. But when you look at what they could potentially gotten years ago, which I'm still confused to this day, why these guys didn't form a podcast when they were working for Joe Budden. And Joe Budden, you heard it from his own mouth that he encouraged those two guys to do their own thing. I don't know if these two guys are that very committed in the podcasting world. I don't know if these two guys wanted to give up all their social time to do a podcast, or they just didn't understand the parameters of a podcast. But like I've said in numerous videos, I don't understand why they didn't just do their own podcast. Those two guys did their own podcast, even if it was under the Joe Budden umbrella. If it was also playing on the Joe Budden's YouTube channel. He likes to call it a network. It's a YouTube channel. We all can create a YouTube channel, Joe Budden. Okay. I don't know why you call it the Joe Budden Network, but that's neither here nor there. They could have done it under that. They could have done a side deal where they could have, done a podcast of their own in conjunction with Spotify or something else. They could have gotten their own bag. Joe Budden was not in the way of them getting their own bag. He encouraged those guys to get their own bag. And I don't understand why they didn't do it. And maybe it's because of all the things I've just said, or maybe they just wasn't interested in doing a podcast at that conjunction. But now, since they are 88 out the gate from the Joe Budden show, and, bills are due, and, responsibilities need to be met. Now they're doing a podcast. They forcefully had to do a podcast. But like I said, this is a good deal for you and I. This is a good deal for a lot of people in the world. But $10 million is not a good deal, particularly when you don't know the parameters of this contract, how exclusive this contract is, how much of their IP that they own. We don't know none of that stuff. Charlamagne the God, if you love it, hate it, whoever, love him or hate him, still owns his IP. Joe Budden, love him or hate him, still owns his IP and make money. Same thing with Charlamagne the God. DJ Academics still owns his IP and still makes money. And DJ Academics is on all other platforms, negotiating with networks. Now, this is a personal opinion. I've been watching Rory and Mal show. I like the chemistry between the two guys because you can tell they're friends. But however, that don't translate into podcasting, listening, and how big your podcast is. I still think they're missing another host. I think they should think about getting a female host. Not a female that's not too political, not too left-winged, someone that maybe not in their circle. I think you should experiment with different female hosts. I think they need a third wheel on that show to make that show blow up. Or, they should do, like everyone else does, have a studio with a lot of people that work in the studio a lot and mic them up. You may have some funny stories or funny moments that way. Charlamagne the God and Andrew, they do it on their podcast. DJ Academics does not do it on his, but Joe Budden does it on his. At one point in time, Gilly and Wallow, $1 million worth of game, used to do it with I forgot his name. He's no longer there. But before that, they had Tony the Closure and Don't Call Her a White Girl doing it as well. I feel like when you add different variables, different people, maybe saying a word or two, or a third host, I feel like that could make the show run a lot better. It's hit or miss with me with Rory and Mal, particularly listening to their podcast. And I think that's more so about me because I'm hit or miss with all podcasts. I don't religiously listen to every podcast. Now, there are some podcasts that I will listen to every day. Okay. But I'm hit or miss with Rory and Mal. It really depends on what they're talking about. And they're basically just talking about regular life, and they get into certain topics. They don't, I just feel like a third host is needed. A different perspective is needed. Okay. But, yeah, that's all I got, for this. But, once again, I don't want to make this video any longer than it's already going to be. Congratulations on Rory and Mal signing a deal, the $10 million deal. But there's a lot of parameters of this deal we don't know about. And we'll probably know about it at a later date. And, still we haven't heard any, possibilities of Rory and Mal suing Joe Budden or Joe Budden suing Rory and Mal. So who won on that level ultimately? Okay. So that's all I got for this. So guys, tell me what you think. Rate, comment, subscribe. I'll talk to you guys later. Deuces.